You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
The following podcast is scheduled for one fall. Coming in at 195 pounds from Studio A, he is the reigning, defending, undisputed host of the Ring of Thunder, Sexy Thor! Hello, Thunderverse. We are now done with Hell in a Cell week, which now means the WWE Thunderdome's days are becoming very much numbered. Which means, of course, I believe the hashtag SexyThor for Thunderdome will be retired. At least not for a few more weeks. But soon. Very soon. It was a nice time. It was a fun experience actually getting to be in there. One of the few Monday nights I've actually managed to have already off so I could watch the damn thing live. But of course then it was just kept up for fun as the whole thing. Because, I could have saw a whole lot of cross-pollination marketing potential between the Thunderdome and the Thunderverse. But hey, maybe it'll be back. Hopefully not by necessity. Because if it came back in necessity, then there's bigger problems in the world again. But we're not going to harp on that anymore. But what we are going to harp on is that now Nikki Cross took on Charlotte Flair, not in a beat the clock challenge, but in a regular match. So surely Charlotte was going to win, right? Nope. Nikki won by countout because Charlotte couldn't stop taunting Rhea Ripley, who was sitting over at either she was at commentary or she was by the entrance ramp. But yeah, so Nikki Cross is just stacking up all these wins, and hey, good for you. Good for Nikki. Good for Nikki. Now it's just like, we'll see where she continues to go over the next month as we trot along over to Money in the Bank. I'm just saying, if she's involved in like the Raw Women's Championship match that will probably happen there, I don't know, then she's probably going to get some pretty great cheers out of that, because she is just like the supreme underdog of the women's division, even also having been a former two-time women's tag team champion. But hey, we shall see. The summer's only getting hotter as crowds return. And then we got John Morrison defeating Jeff Hardy, which on paper, and should always be in real life, John Morrison versus Jeff Hardy should be a fucking high-flying killer of a match. But it was just kind of a footnote to what just followed, which was after John Morrison beat Jeff Hardy, Cedric Alexander came out and taunted Jeff Hardy a little bit and took offense at Jeff Hardy allegedly being a sore winner, that he allegedly taunted Cedric Alexander, even though I just remember Cedric doing those little finger guns that Jeff does. But then Jeff Hardy went ahead and challenged Cedric to a match right then and there, and he said he'll even put his career on the line, so if Cedric can beat him right there, he'll retire. Which, yeah, that's just a thing to just randomly throw out on Raw. And then, yeah, Jeff beat Cedric Alexander, so Jeff Hardy not retiring, hopefully anytime soon. And then Eva Marie finally returned after like those 5,000 weeks of videos and vignettes talking about how she's a role model and all that. And she returned accompanied by Piper Niven from NXT UK. Though, as far as the commentators knew, apparently, Eva Marie just fucking plucked her Piper out of, like, I don't know, WXW or just some random indie promotion because they had no idea who the fuck she was, even though she's been in WWE on the NXT UK brand for at least 2 years now. You know, at least when people come to the main roster from NXT, usually, at least in the last few years, before, maybe not so much back when NXT was a lot smaller, but that hasn't been the case in years. You know, usually when they come out, the commentators know exactly who they are. You know, Keith Lee, Damian Priest, Shayna Baszler, so on and so forth. But here, Piper Niven came out straight out of NXT UK, and they were just like, oh, Eva Marie's back with, and who's that with her? We have no idea. It's just like, oh my God, get a clue. NXT UK is just like a 1 hour watch on a Thursday. You couldn't do that much. I did that for most of the time. Though, sadly, I've been slacking a bit aside from that episode last week when Meiko Satomura became NXT UK Women's Champion. But I still follow it at least pretty loosely at all times, so I know who everybody is. You know, if Tyler Bate showed up on SmackDown on Friday, I'd know exactly who he was. And if Michael Cole had no idea who he was, Michael Cole, who's just been the WWE guy for over 20 years, and also Pat McAfee, who has participated in NXT, didn't know who Tyler Bate was, I'd just be like, okay, that doesn't bury Tyler, that buries y'all. And ditto with Jimmy Smith, Corey Graves, and Byron Saxton not knowing who Piper Niven is. It's just like, so you're telling me that none of y'all knew nothing about, you know, NXT UK takeovers in 2019 and 2020, early 2020, obviously, when Piper was in the NXT UK Women's Championship scene with Kaylee Ray and Toni Storm. It was a whole big thing because, you know, after Toni had lost her championship at TakeOver Cardiff, and she took a couple months off, and Piper was challenging for the NXT UK Women's Championship against their fallen friend Kaylee Ray, and then Toni came back, and she became deranged and obsessed with the title. And then she was in that, and they were in that triple threat, and that was the last NXT UK takeover they had. And then, of course, Kaylee Ray retained, and Toni was just like deranged, and it seems like their friendship was split. And then Toni had like one final shot at the NXT UK Women's Championship before she got moved over to NXT. And then it was an I Quit match, and Toni, who was very much in pain, wouldn't quit, but Piper came out there and I think she threw in the towel for her. And so all that, very important storylines, but y'all don't know who Piper Niven is. And the plan with her was insane too, because first she was going to get like some new name like Dewdrop or something. And then the plan was, the original plan was to debut her with Eva Marie. And then the plans changed that she wasn't going to debut with Eva Marie. And then, of course, at the last second, the plans changed back to she was going to debut with Eva Marie. If your head's hurting right now, well, that's literally Raw for you. And then RK Bro defeated New Day. Thank goodness for those 4 guys, because they're carrying the show and very much the not headache version of it. Rhea Ripley defeated Asuka clean as a whistle in a WrestleMania 37 rematch. And I say that because, you know, we're also going to kind of get a WrestleMania 34 rematch in the same episode. Because to, of course, build up to Alexa Bliss versus Shayna Baszler for that it's taking place at Hell in a Cell. We had Alexa Bliss versus Nia Jax, which is a rematch of WrestleMania 34 for the Raw Women's Championship and that whole body positivity angle. And it was nice to actually see, Alexa actually do some wrestling. Despite what you may think of Alexa's in-ring work, I actually enjoy it. So I was excited to actually see this again, as opposed to her, whatever that was with Randy Orton, where she just brought things down upon Randy and shot fire out of things. And yeah, trying to think. I don't think I've seen Alexa actually do any wrestling since the Nikki Cross feud, which turned into a pretty quick match where Alexa got over. And then a few months later, I think right after the Rumble in January, she and Nikki had a match. And it was still on Raw too. We couldn't have paid respects for the first 2-time women's tag team champions and put this shit on a pay-per-view. Whatever. But yeah, so Alexa actually got to work this time. And of course, she was about to finally hit the Twisted Bliss on Nia, which was nice to see because she didn't do any Sister Abigail's. Spoiler alert, not on her or Shayna. Or she kind of had the inverted Sister Abigail. Or I thought she was going to. I don't know. We'll talk about that in the Shayna match during the Hell in a Cell segment. Now I'm getting all muddled. But it was nice to see Alexa actually do her old moves like the Bliss DDT. And she was going for the Twisted Bliss and she actually hit it on Nia and was about to go for the 1-2-3 when Reginald pulled Alexa off Nia and got the disqualification. So Alexa ended up hypnotizing and controlling Reginald to mirror her movements, which was just a head tilt, and then she just disappeared. But there's more of that later. Not on Raw, but on Hell in a Cell. And then Drew McIntyre versus AJ Styles, which I always love to see. Of course, ended in disqualification when Bobby Lashley jumped in. So it turned into a 6-man tag match between Drew and the Viking Raiders versus Bobby Lashley, AJ Styles, and Omos. And ended with Drew hitting Bobby Lashley with the Claymore and getting the clean 1-2-3. So he's probably losing at the pay-per-view. Then William Regal was set to give his retirement speech after all the recent chaos in NXT when Karrion Kross and Scarlett came out to taunt him and was just begging him to go ahead and say he's quitting. And then Samoa Joe's music hit and the entire Capitol Wrestling Center went nuts. And Regal offered Joe the job as NXT general manager. Joe declined and instead declared he'll be Regal's enforcer and keep the chaos at bay and make sure Regal gets the respect he deserves. Regal agreed to this. Then Joe quickly went to work asking what Kross was still doing in the ring and stared him down until the champ left and soon after. And of course, he had the wonderful line of, "Tick-tock, young champion." And soon after that, Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole were having a scuffle backstage, and Joe helped break it up. Adam Cole got a bit too pushy, so Samoa Joe put him to sleep with the coquina clutch. The 2 rules Joe has to go by to be Regal's enforcer is that he cannot be an active competitor, and he cannot lay a hand on the wrestlers unless provoked. Adam Cole, of course, as he's wont to do, definitely provoked. The 2 former Undisputeds were told to find opponents for next week, and then in a couple of weeks at the Great American Bash, Adam Cole versus Kyle O'Reilly in a regular good old-fashioned one-on-one sanctioned match. There were other great Samoa Joe spots like him telling Johnny Gargano to get out of the office and a stare down with Pete Dunne. Ooh, NXT is about to get so much fun. And of course, we gotta say it. Welcome back, Samoa Joe. So exciting. Then Kushida defeated Trey Baxter in a Cruiserweight Championship Open Challenge, and then was challenged by Kyle O'Reilly for next week, which of course Kushida accepted. Adam Cole still has no opponent and is just said to be in action this week, so we'll see who that is. LA Knight was presented with the $1 Million Championship, then assaulted Ted DiBiase until Cameron Grimes made the save. So Cameron Grimes, definitely babyface, which you never thought it would happen, but ever since he did he's, pivoted his gimmick to the whole stocks thing. Like, he's just been over like Rover. And it seems Io Shirai has entered the women's tag division with Zoe Stark as her partner and going right after Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell, while Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai took care of Kaden Carter and Casey Catanzaro. And for the life of me, I cannot remember if there was a Dexter Lumis appearance this episode. I don't think so, because I haven't seen memes and stuff about it blown up over social media since last Tuesday, so it's a quiet week for Dexter after that whole Poppy hug. And then Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher defeated the grizzled young veterans in a wild tornado tag team match. It's a pretty cool match, but I just told you about it so I could say grizzled young veterans again, because it's something I will not ever get tired of. And the overarching story over Impact in the fallout of Sami Callihan getting fired at the end of Saturday's pay-per-view is that Anthem, or the board of Anthem, the company that owns Impact Wrestling, will apparently be sending a representative to make a call about Sami Callihan's future with the company. And it was a whole thing, and Don Callis was just like, oh, they're going to send me a gift basket. And Scott D'Amore was just feeling real nervous over it. And especially when at the end, before the board members or the representative came out and informed the EVPs of their decision, that Sami Callihan came out and was just like, all right, I'm here and I'm pissed and just raging all over the place. And then, of course, Scott D'Amore came out and was just like, Sammy, dude, I'm on your side, but your acts like this is kind of just proving Don Callis right. So Sammy was just like, okay, I'll play ball. And then he pressed his button on his cell phone and he disappeared. And then Don Callis came out. They were having a little chat, and then Tommy Dreamer came out, and Scott was just like, okay, I know you're saying like Don is my enemy, but this is really not the time, and we're still waiting on the Anthem board representative. So, and Tommy was just like, I am the Anthem board representative. It's like, what? Tommy Dreamer, man who helped pioneer Extreme Wrestling and also representative of the Anthem board. Who would have thunk it? Of course, he had his hair tied back all nicely and had a little blazer on, so he looked real official. And he informed them that the board has made the decision to reinstate Sami Callihan, but also to have another change, because it seems like some people in the executive part of things have let emotions get in the way of business, and they can't have that and all that. And he made it sound like, and that was kind of a dick move, made it sound like they were going to fire Scott D'Amore because he actually treats the wrestlers like people, while Don Callis is just like, they're just low-life scum who make us money, while Scott D'Amore actually cares. So Tommy was making it sound like Scott D'Amore was getting fired because he's actually treats the wrestlers like people, and like that somehow got in the way of business. And then Tommy did a whole swerve and said, so Don Callis, you're fired. It's like, oh, shit. Finally. And of course, Don Callis obviously getting fired because he very obviously clearly has a Kenny Omega first agenda over his duties as EVP of Impact Wrestling. So that was just wonderful. And then Don was just leaving in a huff, and then Sami Callihan was waiting backstage, and he was just like, well, look, I don't think it's effective immediately, so you can't hurt me yet. And Sami was just like, oh no, I'm not going to hurt you like right now, like physically. It's like, I'm going to hurt your boy Kenny Omega at Slammiversary, and you're going to feel every scream and every bone I break in his body. And Don seemed a lot more afraid of that too, for sure. But yeah, so Don Callis finally getting his comeuppance at the hands of Tommy Dreamer firing him. Awesome. And also in there was a W. Morrissey interview fresh off his destroying Rich Swann at the pay-per-view. And I just sort of bring this up because, this morning, now that we're off Hell in a Cell and we're on the road to Money in the Bank, I started watching Money in the Bank 2018 on Peacock, and the opening match was Daniel Bryan versus Big Cass. Of course, W. Morrissey's former persona, who he was in WWE, and yeah, it was a pretty good match. It's a pretty good match. And wow, I wonder when Big Cass was actually released from WWE, because Money in the Bank happened like June 25th, I want to say, of that year. And it's like, I just started watching a couple weeks later, and he wasn't on Extreme Rules 2018. And I'd never seen him. I don't think I saw him the whole time on Raw. I might have to dig in and, really rewatch my wrestling beginnings with these more informed eyes that I have. Because I'm just curious if I ever did see Big Cass on there. I know I didn't see Enzo because he was long gone on 205 Live by the time I finally started watching 205 in August. Back when I happened him on a SmackDown show, and I was just like, oh wait, what is this other show right afterwards? But yeah, it was a good show. And man, I almost got sucked right into that pay-per-view because I was enjoying all these memories that I didn't actually have, if that makes sense, because it was a lot of people that I already know. Like, for example, so of course, obviously, Daniel Bryan, and I'm familiar with Big Cass more with his work he's got going on right now as W. Morrissey. And then, what was the second match? Oh, the second match was Sami Zayn versus Bobby Lashley. This is when Bobby Lashley was a super babyface, and he was in a feud with Sami Zayn, where Sami just kept calling into question his military service. And I actually remember I watched part of an episode of Raw. I guess it was back that month in June 2018. This is while I was still at my night job that was working me pretty much every night, and I didn't really have any real opportunity to start watching Raw or SmackDown or anything like that. And yeah, I remember seeing that segment where Sami was up in the rafters and he was questioning Bobby Lashley's military service, and I was just like, ooh, how is he not getting murdered right there by some very fanatical fans right there? But then, of course, because it's a work. I mean, not Bobby Lashley's military service, that's definitely legit, but Sami Zayn, like, being a douche about it up in public is obviously a work. I know these things now. But yeah. Moving on. Honestly, I just brought up the W. Morrissey interview so I could just talk about Money in the Bank 2018, because I might integrate that in some episodes of just talking about pay-per-views I've watched, because, it's really just like less like recapping the week's action in the world of wrestling and more just recapping all the shit I did and watched and played and experienced that involved wrestling. Oh, and also there was going back to Money in the Bank 2018 pay-per-view, Seth Rollins versus Elias for the Intercontinental Championship. And that match was actually really good. I think that was the fucking best match I've seen Elias in since I've started watching, because all the other ones, he just usually ends up getting squashed, or if he does win, it's just like maybe not even 10 minutes, or just part of just something ridiculous like his current feud with Jackson Riker. But yeah, this match was actually really fucking good. I'm just like, huh. I mean, I know Elias's sort of gimmick is just being an asshole rock star type, but still, it's just like, Elias could actually work, I would think. Anywho's, back to some real in-ring stuff in the present day on AEW Dynamite. Started off with Jake Hager versus Wardlow inside the Octagon, I shit you not, having a bout with MMA rules. Of course, there are no judges, so it was 3 5-minute rounds, and the only way to lose is submission, knockout, or TKO. And so, yeah, they had that bout, and of course, it wasn't going to go the full 3 5 minutes because this match was still predetermined, and the story they were telling was that Jake Hager is an experienced MMA fighter, and this is his ground, and Wardlow was holding his own, but he was also like going back into his professional wrestling instincts, also throwing in power bombs and Hurricane Ranas. But it was still no match for Hager's pure MMA fight. And of course, obviously, like everything else, and especially things that are different in professional wrestling, this was a little splitting or divisive among the fans, but I enjoyed it. I am a very casual MMA fan. I definitely don't hate on MMA, even though like I spent years like really trying to get into it and then understand it and enjoy watching it, and I just became a casual fan. While with professional wrestling, it was like, lightning striking right at the right time, like freaking Barry Allen and the Speed Force, and that little lightning bolt hitting me from the particle accelerator, and love of professional wrestling / thunderverse born right then, right there. So that's how it is. Like, professional wrestling was just like a for me, while MMA is just like, okay, yeah, this is cool. But yeah, so Jake Hager, I believe he just made Wardlow pass out. And of course, right before Wardlow passed out, he sent a nice little middle finger to Chris Jericho in defiance. And then a big old Inner Circle Pinnacle brawl broke out. I think we're going to have like the individual matches between members of both warring factions. I think we're kind of done with the whole both groups fight together in big epic match, because there was a sort of thing building for FTR versus Santana and Ortiz at some time. And then this coming Saturday, I think it will be, or maybe it'll be the following Wednesday, we'll have Sammy Guevara versus MJF. So yeah, Inner Circle and Pinnacle not done with each other. Also not done with each other is the Nightmare Family and the Factory, because Cody Rhodes and Brock Anderson, son of Arn Anderson, making his Dynamite debut, defeated QT Marshall and Aaron Solo. And of course, Cody and QT have their strap match on July 7th, still on their Road Rager in Miami. Then Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky defeated Darby Allin in a 2-on-1 handicap match, because Darby asked Sting to stay home, and Sting obliged. But Darby still really brought it to him, and it became very close, and I was just like, I think Darby could actually win this, because especially after he zip-tied Ethan Page's legs together, and like actually got the better of Scorpio Sky until Ethan dragged Darby out of the ring. But hey, we'll see where it goes from there. And then Jim Ross interviewed Andrade, and Andrade was talking about his goals in his partnership with Vicky Guerrero, and apparently he's going to be wearing a black mask at some point. So maybe his actual name is Roman Sionis. Sorry, I had to throw it in there. And then Penelope Ford defeated Julia Hart of the Varsity Blondes. And I mean, I think at this point we should just say she's of the Varsity Blondes, because she's still listed as Varsity Blondes and Julia Hart. It's just like, just throw her in there. We don't need to say Varsity Blondes and Julia Hart. She's the Varsity Blonde. But then Miro came out afterwards to taunt Penelope because her husband Kip Sabian is still injured. And then he laid out Griff Garrison and he fought Brian Pillman Jr. So it'll be Miro versus Brian Pillman Jr. for the TNT Championship on Saturday Night Dynamite. And then also last Thursday, AEW had a 2-point show, which is the show on YouTube they have where they just update us more on the upcoming AEW video games, and they talk more about the current Casino Double or Nothing game that's on mobile devices. And we're talking about the recent beta, I think it was, of the Elite General Manager game, which I believe is also on mobile devices, or going to be on mobile devices. And we got a little bit of a teaser for the AEW Simulator console game. We got to see the little 3D model for Darby Allin and see some very, very rough looking gameplay between Darby Allin and this humanoid green blob wrestler thing. And even saw like the motion of Darby Allin doing his coffin drop. And so far it looks pretty good. And on SmackDown, first let me start off with Liv Morgan defeated Carmella 2 weeks ago. I forgot to mention this, and I'm surprised I forgot to mention this because I'm a big Liv Morgan fan. But she actually defeated her 2 weeks ago with her actual finisher, the Oblivion, where it's like Liv just like jumps on the rope, grabs them, and then hits them with a flatliner looking thing. And so I was just like, holy fucking shit. Like, Liv is actually getting to demonstrate her in-ring work and also actually get to use her finisher. Because the very few times that the Riot Squad haven't lost and that Liv has been the one to get the pin, it's literally, I don't even think I saw an Oblivion once during the Riot Squad's second run. Like, I think it was all, of course, the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment. That being the surprise roll-up. I mean, granted, it got her a win against somebody as badass as Shayna Baszler, but still, it's a fucking surprise roll-up, and I like the Oblivion. It's just like, and it's a whole thing with Alexa Bliss, too. Like, I know both of their in-ring work is kind of divisive among fans, but I enjoy them both. So now that Liv is more showcased, despite the fact that I hate that the fucking Riot Squad had to break up, especially the way that they did. Like, of course, just taking the positives and making lemons out of lemonade. And neither of them were on TV this past week, which was kind of weird from a continuity standpoint. But it's WWE, what you gonna do? But I have a feeling that's because they're probably going to have a rubber match in the form of a Money in the Bank qualifying match. And of course, I will be rooting like hell for Liv to win that one, even though it'd be weird if there was a Money in the Bank without Carmella. Because Carmella pretty much is the first women's Money in the Bank winner and had the whole Mella is Money slogan. So it just feels weird for her to not be in Money in the Bank. So I'm just like, oof. I don't know. But we shall see. And then there was just some more setup for Bianca Belair and Bayley, Seth Rollins and Cesaro, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. So Kevin Owens was hacking up along with that latest Nigerian nail he got, and that'll definitely come into play on Sunday. And then finally, oh yeah, a bit of an update. So all of a sudden, Rey Mysterio tweeted earlier last week, "I can't wait for Sunday. I want to fight you in Hell in a Cell on Friday." And Roman was like, "All right, I'll destroy you then too." So our main event on SmackDown was what would have been the main event of the pay-per-view, which was Roman Reigns defeating Rey Mysterio in Hell in a Cell to retain the Universal Championship. And it was a shorter than usual contest, which was a bit disappointing, but it was done by himself. It was technically clean, just brutal. Afterwards, Paul Heyman and Jimmy Uso, who has now bought in and acknowledged the tribal chief, were with him, and Jimmy raised Roman's arm. No word of where Jay is, though, after he stormed off the week before. Now we're getting to some commercial breaks, and then Hell in a Cell time.
Tired of the same old movie podcasts?
Yeah.
What if I told you there's a podcast that gabs about good and bad movies?
Why are you spreading such lies?
It's true, you rascal. Every week, Double Edge Double Bill mixes that scrumptious taste of good movies with the sour flavor of a bad one.
That sounds tasty.
Well, don't delay. Stuff it down your ear throats today. Double Edge Double Bill is part of the Balance ESO Network breakfast. Can be found wherever you download podcasts.
My name is Mark McCray, and I'm the author of The Best Saturdays of Our Lives.
I'm Dan Klink, co-host of the Best Saturdays of Our Lives podcast.
The Best Saturdays of Our Lives features programming trends from the 1966 television season all the way through the last hurrah of the early digital age of the 1990s.
On the show, if it's animated, we talk about it.
Order your signed copy today at tbsool.com.
And listen to the podcast at esonetwork.com and all podcast platforms.
Hello. Have you ever wondered how much Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster sold Superman's rights to DC for? Or which popular football star was the Sam Wilson the Falcon's physical appearance based on? You can find all that and more at the History of Comic Books podcast, a podcast dedicated to the creators, events, history, and the companies that made the great comic book medium. Hosted and created by your friendly neighborhood JT Wheatley. Please give it a listen at iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, and all our podcasting platforms. Thank you, and go ahead and enjoy yourself a good comic book.
Hey guys, gals, and non-binary pals.
It's Amanda Bones.
And I'm Ashley.
Of How to Talk to Your Friend About Wrestling, the podcast on the Count Out Wrestling Podcast Network, a weekly show where we talk about all of our favorite things, babes, blood, and brutality.
We also talk about other fun things, like is Kenny Omega finally too tan? And how much blood is too much blood? Because that looks like way too much blood.
So join us on the adventure of teaching me, Amanda Bones, about wrestling.
Look, we gotta talk.
Yeah, Thunder Talk.
We're going all kinds of sideways with that sweet nerd junk.
Woke nerd junk.
It's topical.
Political.
Dare I say radical.
We've got all your latest news and reviews.
Hot music.
And a whole lot of comedy.
But it ain't for kids.
Definitely mature content.
So let's talk.
Let's talk Thunder Talk.
Thunder Talk is a proud member of the ESO Network. On the kickoff show, Natalya defeated Mandy Rose. So, of course, I assume the natural progression here is that it'll be Tamina versus Dana Brooke, like probably tonight. And I don't know, 50-50 booking. Dana Brooke wins because of a surprise roll-up, I would assume, because Tamina would destroy her otherwise. And then we start off with Bianca Belair defeating Bayley with a KOD on the ladder, ouch, to retain the SmackDown Women's Championship. And Seth Rollins defeated Cesaro with a small package roll-up. And then the match that I actually enjoyed very much, even though I've kind of been as critical, pretty critical for me, of all Alexa's Playground and all that. But Alexa Bliss defeated Shayna Baszler in a contest I actually enjoyed. And Shayna got a chance to get her usual offense in where she's like twisting and wrecking limbs, but that only seemed to make Alexa happier because she's a crazy demon. And that just seemed to power her up even more. And then finally, and Reginald was trying to get involved at some points, but then Alexa locked eyes with Nia, and then she hypnotized Nia and got control of her, and then did the whole mirroring the motion thing, and so she actually got Nia to slap Reginald, which was, I found that pretty funny. And then, Alexa hit that twisted bliss, right? Yeah, pretty sure she did. And then got the 1, 2, 3, so who the hell knows where this story goes from here? I couldn't even tell you. I mean, I keep harping on, doing a whole long-term revenge arc, just like The Fiend did. So Alexa destroying Shayna as revenge for Ronda Rousey wrecking her a few years ago. And of course, she's got still beef to get with Nia Jax. After Nia took the Raw Women's Championship off of her back in that WrestleMania in 2018. And of course, you could just go and program with Charlotte, because Charlotte beat her at Survivor Series back in 2017. Could have one. You could always have one with Bayley and Sasha at some point, even though they're on the opposite brand. Because, of course, Alexa's had all sorts of bouts and contests with them over the years. And then maybe one with Becky when she comes back. But save that one for last, and I'll tell you why. And then, of course, you could have one with Rhea Ripley, because Rhea eliminated her in the Royal Rumble after like 10 seconds. Which still... So you could have that and have her win the Raw Women's Championship. Either off of Rhea or Charlotte. I don't know, whoever the fuck is Raw Women's Championship at that point. And then, end it with Becky being the one to beat her and getting the Raw or SmackDown Women's Championship on her. And I think that's just, well, I don't know. I feel like, part of me kind of feels like they'll book Alexa better than they book The Fiend, because Alexa's been one of the top women in the division for a few years and has gotten treated pretty well. She's had to work her way back from the concussions and then just being in some sort of weird limbo, but it sounds like she's on her way back up. So maybe you don't have Becky beat her for the Raw Women's Championship. That would make sense, because Alexa on her revenge tour got beaten by all these others, but Becky didn't. She doesn't really have any revenge to take against Becky. In fact, if anything, Becky has revenge to take against her from when they were in SmackDown together in late 2016, but I don't know. We'll see. Speaking of which, Becky Lynch was backstage, and that's it. And then Sami Zayn defeated Kevin Owens, who is still in a coughing fit, still suffering from the Nigerian nail. And then Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair, which is really good and an entertaining match, because both of them are really awesome. Ended in a disqualification when Rhea hit Charlotte with the announced table cover, but Rhea still retains the Raw Women's Championship due to champion's advantage. So we may have had a double turn in here. And then Bobby Lashley defeated Drew McIntyre thanks to MVP's interference on at least a couple different accounts. Nice moment, though, when MVP realized he was locked in the cell now, and Drew beat the living shit out of him. But still, Drew had this one a couple of times, but had no conscious ref to make the count. It ended with MVP popping up and distracting Drew, who got the surprise roll-up from Lashley, which is like the most Raw ending ever for Raw's major championship. And come to think of it, the ending to this and the Raw Women's Championship were like the most Raw endings ever. Great matches, but whatever finishes. And that's how Drew leaves the title picture for the time being, I guess. But he's still going to be a major player for years to come. And I think this is probably going to be coming up the first time since before he won the Royal Rumble that he's actually going to not be in the title picture, either as the champion or chasing the title. So this will be an interesting new era we'll be in. But it was a lot of fun. It got us through a pandemic. And, of course, had that wonderful moment even before we knew a pandemic was coming where, Ricochet hit Brock Lesnar in the balls and then Drew Claymored Brock over the top rope after Brock already eliminated, the first half of all the competitors. Good times. Good times. But, yeah. So with that ending Drew's current run in the title picture, because I'm sure he'll be back eventually after somebody eventually dethrones Bobby Lashley. This is also the last pay-per-view in the WWE Thunderdome. So now we have a few more weeks of television still in the Thunderdome, and then on the 16th, on Friday Night SmackDown, we're back traveling. I say we're back as if I work for the company. I wish. But they're back traveling and in front of the WWE Universe again. So that'll be very exciting. Yeah, the 16th, SmackDown will be back with WWE Universe. The 17th is Impact Slammiversary, which will be in front of fans. And then Sunday the 18th will be Money in the Bank, which is in front of fans. We're less than a month away. After thinking about it and dreaming about it all these years. No, not all these years, all these months. Oh my God, it hasn't been years. Ugh. That would be horrible. But yeah, these things are coming back to fruition. As in case in point last Saturday when we all went to escape the netherworld in Stone Mountain, Georgia. And it was just surreal from the moment I drove past the Welcome to Georgia state line, and I just had a big ass grin on my face almost the whole time, and went to Grindhouse Killer Burgers in Decatur, and I was just like, holy shit. So it's not downtown Atlanta, not like, the Dragon Con part of Atlanta, but it was still technically inside the perimeter, and I was just like, holy shit, this is finally happening again. And I'm going to say it again when I see the WWE Universe back in arenas on TV. And then, of course, August 14th, when me and Nick go to the Super Show in Charlotte. Ooh, it's going to be exciting. And that's the 1, 2, 3. Thanks for locking up with me in the Ring of Thunder. Kick butts, not nuts.
Welcome to Dr. Geek's Laboratory.
Hello everyone, Dr. Geek here with a shout out to all the scientists who worked tirelessly to bring a COVID-19 vaccine into reality. Let's face it, creating something of this magnitude is a miracle worthy of Dr. McCoy himself. And now, Dr. Geek needs you to do your part. Remember, each shot is one small step back to normal, one giant leap to putting the pandemic behind us. We can do this. For more information, visit vaccines.gov to find your nearest provider.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.